Bigfoot Society would like to thank the following sponsors for helping make the podcast possible. The Singular Fortean Society has combined open and honest paranormal investigation and journalism since 2016. Visit the Society at Singular Fortean for all the latest weird news and more. Come with us and investigate the impossible. Lauren Smith is the hostess for Nightcaller's Bigfoot Radio, which has been on air for over a decade and has completed over 300 shows. Lauren brings with her a unique viewpoint given that she is not only the daughter of one of the veteran female Bigfoot researchers in the South, but she has been conducting field research since she was a preteen some 20 years ago. Nightcallers is a Bigfoot world favorite and, along with interviewing researchers and witnesses, often features interviews with guests from the documentary, film, and entertainment industry. Lauren also does a vidcast segment called Nightcallers, which features real encounters sent in by viewers. You can find all of this and more at nightcallersproductions.com. Welcome to the Bigfoot Society Clubhouse, where we discuss a new or old topic in cryptozoology every week. Just hang out and have a good time. I do need to let you know that by hanging out with us on stage and talking in the discussion, you are giving consent to being recorded, which will be used in a future Bigfoot Society podcast, YouTube video, could be anything that you could imagine coming down the pipeline. If you're not comfortable with that, please go ahead and move on down to the audience. Sit back, relax, have a good time. Again, thanks to all for hanging out, and let's just have a good time. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out, everyone, with us during live Wednesday night Bigfoot Society podcast. This is the Bigfoot Society Club on Clubhouse, of course. And I've got a few panelists with me, and also I've got a Greg, my moderator, here in the room. But guys, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first? I'll start with Aleks.
Sure. Hi, how's it going, everyone? Hope everyone's doing well tonight. Thanks for having us on, Jeremiah, and for putting this together. Always an awesome time to hang with everybody. So my name is Alexander Petakov. I'm a filmmaker and a cryptozoology researcher. I have a YouTube channel called Sasquatch Out of the Shadows. We do a live stream every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and I do videos, various explorations around New England and other places. I also am a filmmaker with Small Town Monsters, as well as Chasing Legends. So that's sort of the bio, yeah.
Awesome. And Tate, go right ahead. Introduce yourself, man.
I am Tate Hieronymus. I host the Bluff Creek Project podcast. I am an amateur filmmaker as well. Not to say Aleks is an amateur. Sorry, Aleks. But no, I do that. And I'm no relation to Bob Hieronymus, the infamous guy who claimed to wear the Patterson Gimlin costume in the famous film.
Fantastic. And Greg, go right ahead. Introduce yourself as well.
I'm just a humble moderator here. I'm Greg. I run All the Weird on Instagram. I do some podcasting on Star Wars for Order 66. And I'm spending a lot of time on this Clubhouse thing. So stick around and see what the fun is about.
Amazing. Yeah, Order 66 is a great Star Wars podcast. Definitely check that out if you're into Star Wars. And of course, I'm Jeremiah. I'm the host of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Definitely check that out. We have a good time. We've got Dr. Jeff Meldrum on the podcast next week. And of course, we'll be chatting for a while here, but start thinking about questions. And in a little bit, we will be opening up 2 questions, so you can ask Tate or Aleks what their thoughts on your question about gear to use in the field when you're going out to look for cryptids. So let's go ahead and we'll get started, guys. So let's start with, do you mind sharing what your favorite piece of equipment to use in the field is? Aleks, I'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, there's so much equipment, I feel like, when you're just out in the woods, whatever the environment may be. We're talking about basics, obviously having comfortable clothing and sufficient boots, that kind of stuff, especially if you're out in the wilderness, whatever. But when it comes to tech, My personal favorite type of gear, and I don't always get to deploy it or even bring it sometimes, but it would have to be a drone. So I think drones have just opened up such a new avenue for not only filmmakers, but researchers. I mean, they're using a lot of different businesses. You can use it for pipeline inspection, where you wouldn't have to send a crew in, all sorts of stuff, monitoring wildlife populations, not as invasive, perhaps, except for maybe the sound. So when it comes to Bigfoot research and I guess cryptid research, it's just an awesome tool. One of my favorite uses of the drone. So I have one of the DJI drones, and it's primarily used for filmmaking, but it's really good. And my favorite part of deploying a drone is basically just sending it up. Let's say before I go into an area that I don't know, I might have a map. I may have an idea of what the trails are like or what the conditions are like, but I don't know what it looks like. Maybe you've seen a picture, but that's just not the same as seeing with your own eyes. So deploying a drone, let's say over an area where there's some rocky terrain, I can just look at it right on the screen, capture my video, and then watch it right on my phone, when I'm not flying the drone, or just watch it real time and get an idea for what terrain there is. I can say, well, hey, there's this pond here. Maybe I'll set my marker and I'll go to there and I'll see if there's been anything. I can find any tracks, maybe there's been moose or deer or something. I can kind of see who's been going to the watering hole. So that's just such an awesome feature with the drone, is just being able to just get a bird's eye view that, even 10, 15 years ago, you never would have been able to really have that opportunity, I guess, unless you had a helicopter, which is obviously a lot more difficult to deploy. But the drone, they're getting so tiny now. There's going to be a point in the next couple of years where they're going to fit like in your jeans pocket. But the drones now are so small. I just have the DJI Mavic Pro, and I can just stow it right in my backpack with my other gear. I can have water bottles and everything else that I need and have my drone in there. Now, as I mentioned, I don't always get to deploy it simply because sometimes the weather conditions are not ideal. If it's a crazy blizzard or downpour, I'm obviously not going to fly the drone. I have flown it in those kinds of conditions before, at least with my old drone. And I've had some interesting results. The drone holds up pretty well, but I had a mishap in Louisiana this past October where the first time I'd ever removed obstacle avoidance on the drone, and I managed to crash it into a tree, and it landed on the one piece of dry land in the bayou, which was amazing. And I actually managed to save it, and it's still fine. I still use it. So I would just have to say, the drone. And one thing I should mention about drones is there's now, with DJI and other companies as well, that do FLIR attachments. So FLIRs, which I'll talk about it later on, are forward-looking infrareds, and these are thermal cameras that are absolutely wonderful. They were originally developed for military use, but civilian use now. You can use them to see heat signatures, basically, of things that are in the woods, so wildlife, whatever the case may be. So you have these drones now where the cameras can be coupled with FLIR technology. So, at night, that's just such a great tool to have. You can see animals that are moving about, and as drones get smaller and quieter and more advanced, I think it's just going to be such a useful tool going forward as well, where you're going to get to the point where pretty much everyone, should they want a drone, will be able to get one. Now, they're still kind of pricey, but there's still some really affordable drones out there. But it's going to get to a point where drones are going to be like little GoPros. You can just throw them right in your backpack. You can have 5 of them. You can deploy them into different areas. I'm really excited to see where that takes us down going in the future. So yeah, drone is my favorite piece of equipment.
Awesome. I especially love the drones that are coming out with the thermal. You're starting to see those in a lot of the shows I've noticed. Tate, I'm curious, what is your favorite piece of gear when you're going into the field? If you could chat about that for a bit.
I actually have a few favorite pieces of equipment, if that's good.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, so I agree with Alex. I love the drones. I have a couple of drones myself, and like Alex said, they're really good for kind of scouting out an area and kind of seeing where, things are that you're unfamiliar with. And you can also get a sense of where animals might be. If there's a clear opening, you can see deer from it. And it's a good non-invasive way to not scare off animals by using drones. So I really like them for that reason. And then I actually have a friend when I was up at in the Bluff Creek drainage area last year. He has a drone. It has like the spotlight on it, and it has like a speaker system, so you can talk into the talking to the controller. And it also has a thermal camera on it, which is super cool. So definitely using a drone with a thermal camera you can cover a lot more ground, and it adds a little different method to research in the field. So yeah, drone is one of my favorites. And then another one is like what Alex said again, the FLIR, FLIR. I think they're based in Santa Barbara, California. I have a FLIR Scout TK, which those on Amazon are about $500. So anybody getting into researching Bigfoot or any cryptids can buy one on Amazon for $500. So, and they're really nice. And I think it was like 300 feet away you can see in the dark. So those are really cool. To mention a few honorable mentions of FLIR footage, I have captured some in Southern California. Barcatino, who has been on Finding Bigfoot a couple times, he's captured some in the Sierras of about Southern California, I would say. And then Stacy Brown Jr. in Northern Florida he got some of the best thermal footage of these things. Another piece of equipment I like are trail cameras. The Bluff Creek Project, which I work with in Northern California, we utilize those trail cameras all around the Patterson-Gimlin film site. And we've gotten some amazing photos of mountain lions and bears and foxes. And we even captured footage and video of the Humboldt marten, which was thought to be extinct in the area. But due to our trail camera project, we were able to prove that those martens still live in the area and they're not extinct.
That is, I mean, the whole thing that the Bluff Creek project is doing with the cameras is really, really cool. If you guys haven't heard about that in the audience, you definitely need to check that out further. I'm curious, and I want to make sure some people in the audience might have a question about this. So if we're looking into getting a drone, maybe a beginner drone, is there a make and model, something that's maybe inexpensive that you might be able to recommend? DJI maybe, or any thoughts on that?
The Mavic Mini is pretty cheap. It's like $500, give or take.
Okay.
So it's a great drone, great quality video, and it's relatively cheap. It's literally about the same price as the FLIR Scout TK. So if you bought like the FLIR Scout and the Mavic Mini, you'd probably spend about $1,000, which that's not bad considering how different, like other thermal cameras can range from $2,000, and then the Mavic Pros are about $2,000 as well.
Very cool. Aleks, any thoughts on that, or do your thoughts line up with what Tate said there?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think when in terms of consumer grade stuff, DJI pretty much is the gold standard. I mean, there's some other companies coming. There's Parrot. A lot of the other drones, I mean, you have these kind of racing drones, I guess, where you maybe see those footage of where it's like they're zooming in and out of a canyon or something. Those are a lot, more geared towards, racing and that sort of stuff and actually like trick flying, as opposed to the DJIs are primarily designed for filmmaking. So there's actually another one too, which I would recommend, called the DJI Spark. It's a very tiny one, and I mean, they sell them for like $400. But there are other, off-brand ones that you can find. Let's say you're too nervous to, try out getting a more expensive drone. You could get just like a cheaper one and just kind of practice with it. But at the same time, DJI drones are so easy to fly. I mean, they have all sorts of sensors and obstacle avoidance, which, as I learned the hard way, not to turn off and leave off for sustained periods. But they're just so easy. I mean, you can give them to a child and they can fly it. They have the stabilization technology. It's absolutely incredible. And, if you're getting closer to an object, like let's say you're getting close to a tree or a wall, it'll start beeping and it'll auto stop for you. So, I mean, it's not super hard to crash one of those. I mean, you can crash them, but it's definitely not, the first time you fly it, as when I picked up my first DJI drone, oh God, it must have been 2015 or 16, that, I flew it over a grassy field and I only flew 10 feet above me because I was so nervous. I didn't know what to expect really, but it was just super smooth. And now, you can put them in the craziest of situations and still get some awesome footage. And they're just so useful. And just something I wanted to mention too about coupling it with the FLIR technologies. I mean, people might recall recently seeing the revamped kind of Finding Bigfoot episode that came out towards the end of that episode, they used a drone that had some FLIR on it, I believe. And there's also the show Extinct or Alive with Forrest Galante, where they've used extensively a couple times looking for these animals that might be extinct, FLIR-equipped drones or drones with thermal technology. So those are just some examples that you might see in, on TV. So really cool.
Yeah, to go along with that, like Alex said, the DJIs, they'll literally fly themselves. And I definitely recommend, if you buy one, practice with it, like in an open field, kind of like what Alex was doing, before you go out in the field with it, because you don't want to lose that in a tree. Just because they have sensors, you can actually turn that off in a different mode on the drone. And if you don't have it on, you could crash it very easy. But just definitely practice. I mean, the big thing with any technology going into the field is get to know your equipment. That way you know what's going on, and you know it well when you're in the field in those kind of weird situations when something does happen.
There's some amazing pro tips in this discussion so far. The thing I love about Clubhouse is that how it's so interactive. And what I'd like to start doing at this time is, if anyone in the audience has a question to do with gear used out in the field, like drones, FLIR, trail cam, or maybe they have something they'd want to share themselves about how they've used different gear out in the field, please feel free to raise your hand at this time. Greg will be bringing people up one at a time. And then after, we have our discussion time, then he'll put you back into the audience. So, Greg, I see we have our first individual there.
Hi, friends.
Oh, and feel free to definitely introduce who you are when you come up on stage.
Okay, hi, I'm Kenzie.
Hey, Kenzie.
I run the Crypto Chats podcast, and I frequent this club on Clubhouse. My question is just, what do you guys think are some good pieces of like really basic gear for someone who might just be starting out?
I mean, FLIR is a really good one. I mean, you can buy attachments for your phone that are only like $200. But like I said, the FLIR Scout TK is a pretty good, cheap thermal camera scope, which is nice, and it records and takes pictures internally, which is also really nice. So I think FLIR is a good piece of equipment to buy. That's just my opinion. I don't know, Alexander, what do you think?
Sure, yeah, I totally agree. There's an attachment that you can get for your phone, yeah, as Tate was mentioning, like $200-$300, and it's sort of like a lens you can put on your cell phone. And going off of that, I think having a good camera is one of the most important things. I mean, you don't know when you're out there and you need to document, whether it's just like a cheap point and shoot little digital camera, or perhaps it's your cell phone. I mean, cell phones are getting so great now with the cameras. I mean, you can shoot some really high resolution, 60 FPS. I mean, if iPhone users, I don't know anything about Androids, but I know they have some great cameras too with the Samsungs and everything else too. So having that is important, because let's say you meet somebody along the road you want to interview, like let's say they're willing to share their story. You can interview them with their phone, or you find a track out there, you can document it with your phone, use an object for scale, of course. I'd recommend $1, because the $1 is easy to carry. A lot of people say bring a ruler out. That's preferable, but if you can't bring anything else, like let's say you find a footprint of a moose, or even what you think is Sasquatch, just bring a $1 bill with you. We know exactly how long those are, and we can use them as a scale for reference. So, and having the good camera, whether it's your cell phone, iPhone camera, or like a little digital Canon EOS or something, something you can document evidence and maybe even get video with.
I've actually seen some people take their walking stick or whatever and just make marks on them with a ruler, just for scale that way.
Yeah, that's really smart too. I mean, because obviously a US dollar would only apply, in the United States. Sure, you might be able to look up how big it is, but if you're in another country, use your country's currency. But that sounds like a great idea. Just mark it right on your stick.
I even saw one guy take an axe handle and put the markings on it, and he would use the axe handle to do wood knocks with.
utilizing one thing for two different things.
That is solid. I love that. That's awesome. Kenzie, great question. Thank you so much. Any other questions we might have from the audience? Also, I'm not going to, so I am going to reset the room. If there's anyone in here that also uses a drone that they may have some advice about how to use that drone, definitely feel free to raise your hand and you can share that as well. But yeah, any other questions, feel free to do that right now. But Aleks, I got a question for you while we're seeing if anyone else has a question. Have you heard where some people think that Bigfoot have reactions to electronic things such as trail cams that are set up? Have you heard that theory, or do you have any thoughts about that? Tate, you can chime in on that as well.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely have heard that. That's one thing that people talk about in the Bigfoot community. Say, oh, well, how come we can't get a good trail camera picture? All this sort of stuff. Now, there are, some alleged trail camera pictures. I've seen a few that, are pretty interesting. I mean, it's hard to tell with the trail camera, unfortunately, as it's super clear. I mean, you don't know whether you've got people in a costume or something, whatever, unless there's like more of an investigation. But yeah, one thing that's interesting is, some trail cameras, they give off infrared, obviously, because that's, how they're seeing at night. When a deer walks by, it goes off and lets out a flash. And I've noticed out in the field when I've had, a camcorder on that has night vision, and I'm pointing it towards the trail cameras, it's going off, it lets out this absolutely blinding light that basically the whole lens is just taken over with light for that moment when the camera's flashing. So it makes me wonder if animals that have bioluminescence or night what we call eye shine, because essentially animals like deer, things that are nocturnal, basically operate at night. The reason they can see better than we can is because their eyes reflect the little light that's coming basically in. So, when you shine a flashlight in the field and you see a deer, you see these glowing eyes. That's eye shine. It's basically light reflecting. So that allows them to see in the dark a lot better than we are. So some people thought maybe Sasquatch might have the ability to do that. I don't know. I'm not a biologist or anything along those lines. I certainly don't, claim to be or anything. But just hearing people's stories of getting their trail cameras knocked over and displaced and destroyed in some cases makes you wonder if these creatures might sense electromagnetics or something. I don't know. I mean, I've heard people out there. I've had this happen to me actually, where fresh batteries just go dead. I mean, I don't know if that necessarily has to do with Bigfoot. Perhaps we're in an area where there's a higher deposit of a certain type of mineral that might affect equipment and technology. But there are videos of bears, basically avoiding the lens of the camera and just kind of sniffing around it, because it's like if you were in your room or in your house, all of a sudden there was just a big rock or like a rock hidden somewhere, you'd probably be like, hey, this is not supposed to be in my home, right? So you have to imagine, for animals, they know the woods they live in. They see something that's out of place, they might be curious and go check it out. And there's videos of bears sniffing from the side, and it kind of creates just some hair in the side and makes it look like almost there's something mysterious to it. I mean, perhaps you have that with Sasquatch. I don't know. I think we don't have enough good trail camera evidence from something like a Sasquatch to really sufficiently say one way or another. But there's lots of theories. Some people think that they can zap technology. I mean, I don't know. Once you start going down the rabbit hole, there's definitely a lot of different theories and a lot of ideas. But if we're talking about a strictly biological animal, I mean, I think they might be able to see the infrared, but not manipulate it.
Yeah, I agree. And you're talking about trail cameras, and I think animals can, kind of see the IR light coming out, which is the infrared light coming out of the trail camera. I wouldn't be surprised at all about that. Another thing I found interesting too was on Survivor Man. He put up a trail camera, and they went back to get it, and it wasn't there. And then they found it, I can't remember how far away from the tree they put it on. They found it later, and they got footage of a bear. And what Les Stroud was saying is that the bears can actually smell the lithium batteries that they put in the trail cameras, and it was probably trying to get at it or something, or who knows what it was trying to do. But also these deer and bear and Bigfoots have a better sense of smell than people do, so they could smell something like that probably very easily and also know that there's something not right about this area.
I didn't know that fact that or that theory that bears could smell lithium batteries. That's very interesting, Tate. Very cool. Again, to kind of reset the room, if there are anyone in here that has questions about different types of gear to use while going out into the field to look for different cryptids, feel free to raise your hand if you've got anything to ask or to add to the conversation. Guys, I had a question just come to mind. Let's say there's someone who's like, I want to start going into the field. They're going to start getting a day pack together. What are the bare essentials that these individuals might want to have in their day pack before they're going out into the field? Anything that they should throw in there?
Toilet paper.
Yes, I
Number one.
Number one.
Not toilet paper.
Yeah, God always has some toilet paper. I just wanted to add
too, so it's not going to take up much.
Oh,
it's not going to be heavy.
I just did want to add a really quick story when we were talking about, the bears smelling the lithium batteries.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Formaldehyde is actually used in styrene, which is used to make styrofoam. And I actually have a story of a friend, a Bigfoot researcher in New Hampshire here, who had created. He's an artist, a really great artist. He created this styrofoam looking fake rock where he would put a camera inside, in an attempt to try and get Bigfoot footage, but he had something kept trying to rip it apart until he realized that bears actually can smell formaldehyde and they like that smell. So it's kind of interesting to know that the bears are messing with it. I don't know if he got footage of the bears actually messing with it, but it was definitely interesting to see these massive gashes all over this kind of fake rock looking thing. I can only imagine the scene seeing that out in the woods. But in terms of a day pack, yeah, that's a good question. I think depends on where you are and depends on what your intentions are. So, if you're someone who's a hiker or into the wilderness, you're going into some of these remote areas, I think you should have, a med kit, all sorts of stuff that you might need in case you were to get stuck out there or get hurt. People can get hurt every single day going about their lives. So I always like the idea of carrying, a tourniquet, just your basic med kit, just to be able to get yourself out of a nasty situation. That's just something I think that should be in any Bigfooter's backpack. Doesn't matter if you're even going out just in the local park, just in case, like if you're bringing a pack, throw that in with your notebook and a pen, so you can write down your observations, or you can record yourself giving off the conditions of what the day is like, the temperature, all that kind of stuff, the scientific data that is basically needed. Other tools, as I said, I think it really depends on if you're doing a long haul or if it's just a quick stroll. Pack some snacks, pack some water, that sort of stuff. It's kind of the basics.
Yeah, like if you're going in to study, like you doing like an investigation, looking for Bigfoots, and you want to go on, hiking. If you're taking notes, take them now. But you can always listen to this later. This sounds like a lot, but like I would bring like one of those little not little, but like bring one of those measuring some of the measuring tape that you would go get like a jacket altered or something. Bring like a measuring tape. Also water is good. And then if you're wanting to do get calls or responses, you can bring like a piece of wood or a stick that you can knock on trees. That's also good to carry as a walking stick too. You want good shoes so that good ankle support, so you don't like roll your ankle and get hurt. Then you have to have somebody come find you. And also, like Aleks said, first aid kit. And if this allows, I always carry a gun personally, depending on the area I'm in. Some people may not use one, some people do. But the next best thing you can always bring is a can of pepper spray. That's one thing I definitely recommend is pepper spray.
Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree with Jeremiah if you want to say something.
I was just going to say, Tate, why would you recommend pepper spray?
Bears. It's not foolproof, but it's better than nothing. don't want to come up against an angry black bear and have my bare hands to fight it off. So I'd rather have at least something.
Makes total
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, it comes down to what is in your area. So, I mean, let's say you live in Florida, in the South, as Tate does. When you're out in the woods, you got to be careful for cottonmouth, alligators, that sort of stuff. Some really poisonous snakes. So, I mean, maybe if you are going to bring, a gun or something, pack some bird shot into a little shell or something for a snake or something like that. But stuff like bear spray, I mean, you can use that pretty much anywhere. Bear spray is more, I mean, pepper spray is great, but bear spray, man, that's like a lot nastier than pepper spray itself. So it just comes down to your environment.
You know what's funny? I looked that up because I was wondering, is pepper spray or bear spray worse? And pepper spray is actually like way worse than bear spray. And I'm guessing the reason is because pepper spray, like used by police, is, that's not going to feel good on anybody. Or if you use that on an animal, that's going to really hurt an animal. Pepper spray is definitely, like, bear spray is a lot less potent and not as strong because you don't want to hurt the animal. It's just more of a defense to get distracted and, and like I said, animals' sense of smell is way more better than ours. It's a lot more stronger than the average human. So if you're using like OC spray, like what police use, it's really going to hurt that animal, and you don't really want to hurt anything.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing about bear spray is it's more coming out at once. So I think in a dose, like bear spray used on humans would actually be, pretty intense because it's a larger spray nozzle. So that's why, I mean, it's designed for a bear. I mean, if you spray a bear with regular pepper spray, it's just a smaller kind of stream. But anyway, diverting on the topic, I think when you're going out in the woods, you should just know the dangers. Like if you live in an area that has mountain lions, you should be aware. I mean, attacks are rare, but they do happen. Just know your wildlife and know what's out there, and you should be fine. I mean, attacks in general are pretty rare, but that doesn't mean you should take any chances.
And definitely let know people where you're going to. And like Aleks said, know what the animals are. Research the area you want to go into, and find out the terrain. Get a topography map and see what's there. That'll also be a good tip.
Fantastic. That's a lot of stuff worth writing down there. If you've never gone into the woods before, there's some solid advice there. As we're kind of starting to wrap up a little bit, want to make sure everyone in the room knows if you have a question, now's the time to definitely raise your hand. But Aleks and Tate, any maybe final thoughts, closing thoughts on the topic that we've been talking about tonight?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it doesn't matter really essentially what equipment you have. I mean, obviously a lot of this stuff, it can be expensive, it's something you might have to save up for. I mean, that's totally fine, but do your best. I mean, as I said, bring a notepad and some paper and a pen and just write down your observations, or, get a video of it, because that's just something simple you could do. But the most important thing, I think, when you're out in the woods, out in the field, is have a good time. I mean, you're in nature, you're enjoying something that, we're so blessed to have so many beautiful and different and diverse types of terrain across, the United States and North America. I would say more so than even other continents, just so many different types of biomes and environments, and just take that all in and enjoy. I mean, not every sound you're going to hear is going to be Bigfoot. So you're going to experience a lot of other things, which is awesome. And that's all part of the fun. And I think the more people we get interested in getting out there and getting into nature, I mean, that's just that for me is key right there. And I'm a nature lover, and it's hard not to have a smile when you're out in nature.
I agree. And to go along with that, I mean, most of the whole Sasquatch, when you're out there looking for these things, you don't really hear anything. So don't be disappointed that you don't, because a lot of researchers have been doing it years, will probably go years without hearing one, and they'll get skunked out. And that's just kind of the name of the game. And a lot of it is patience. And to be honest, too, you might have gear you might not even think of you might have gear that you might not even thought about using. This is fairly common. Some people play music. They have guitars and amps. Literally just take that out to an area that you probably know that has sightings, and just play music as loud as you can in the forest and see what happens. Because, at the end of the day, these creatures are very curious. And so when you're playing music, something that's probably never heard in the forest that much, they'll come in and they'll check it out, and that's when things might get a little interesting around camp or wherever you might be at the time.
Some good thoughts, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the episode tonight, everyone in the audience, and Aleks, Tate, and Greg. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Again, if you haven't followed these guys, definitely tap on their profile and give them a follow so that you don't miss any of the discussions that we have in the future. Follow this room. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at this time here.